that you talked about, this is very real. It is very hard to come out in the open and talk about it, and somehow this is seen as a sign of mental weakness, whereas a physical problem is seen as something that's beyond your control. A mental health issue is seen as something that is in your control and you should be able to fix it. So I think just understanding some of the mechanics of this mental health issue could also help, where what is leading to stress, you know, it is an interplay of neurotransmitters and hormones and the kind of stimuli you are getting from outside, right? So I'll just kind of carry on this conversation on the whole idea of stimuli. One of the terms that I recently learned is called doom surfing or doom scrolling. And so Ajay, I'll come over to you, you know, where what it means is essentially mindlessly scrolling through news, from one bad news to another. And, you know, you've of course led large media organizations like Forbes and TV18, and now you are a founder of Arre. And media has been vilified a lot in this space of fake news, putting all sorts of scandalous stories outside, polarization. Would love to hear your perspective, Ajay, on the role that media is currently playing in either perpetuating some of these challenges that we're talking about and can play, and what is the role it can play to improve the image so far.
Thanks, Pooja. So one caveat, I've clearly moved away from the news business. We're in the entertainment side right now, and that's primarily because, you know, like you said, I mean, news was getting extremely politicized once upon a time when we were leaving, and you know, that whole buyout was happening. But more than that, now I think it's getting increasingly polarized across any divisions you can find. So I think the less said about that, the better. But I want to come back to the context of the discussion, which is, and I'll take off from there, you know, onto the media, but because that comes later in my view. See, I think it's a question of priorities also. I've actually managed large organizations with more than 4,000 people, and now we manage a relatively small gig as an entrepreneur. And I've realized that, you know, one cannot take up the mantle of mental health in the true sense, because we are not qualified as organizations or as individuals, as managers or as entrepreneurs, as leaders, to really delve into mental health issues, if there are any. Frankly, those are chemical plus issues, which I think, you know, needs better, you know, kind of help. At best, we put physicians in our, you know, large organizations to come and check, but I don't think we've ever invested in psychiatrists and what have you, and because it was beyond the mandate, because there was no real mandate. So I really think that if there is, I mean, if you move beyond the real, you know, hardcore mental health issues, which actually need really serious attention, therefore I would not want to trivialize that out here, saying, okay, that can be solved by discussions alone, though one part of it is discussions. The other bit, which actually corporate India or workspaces or you know, jobs add to people's lives, is where we can come in as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as, you know, which is, can you reduce the level of insecurity, which is really the driving force of all sort of stress, and may lead to some amount of emotional issues, definitely, if not mental health issues, right? So I think over the years, I've realized that we actually go a lot with the people who are expressive and who talk, and therefore we take that as the, you know, kind of front line of what needs to be done in terms of priority. But really, I mean, the guys who actually need to be taken care of are the people who do not have the opportunity to express themselves, right? So, you know, and there I think actions matter louder than words. Much, I mean, actions speak louder than words, and that's really the philosophy that I've, you know, kind of tried to, you know, kind of sort of adopt over the years and learn from our mistakes. You know, for example, in this crisis, I realized that the real true action that we could have taken is not sacked anybody. You know, now it's a tough action to take, because you know that, you know, you can use this kind of crisis to correct business models, which a lot of companies have done. You can actually, you know, get your cost structures back to the way they ought to be done. There were lots of case to be made for actually going and saying, okay, fine, let's do the sacking part, and let's not look at a across the board, survival mechanism that however, kind of ill-informed that might be, however bad it may look like on, in the balance sheet. But we went ahead and took that large call of saying, okay, no, we will not sack anyone. We will try and, ride through this crisis. We will all take cards. We will do whatever, right? So in my previous avatars, we've not been able to do those kind of things. Maybe because of the size of the organization, maybe because there was too much pressure, maybe because of the stage of life. But I've realized that one job cut can create so much insecurity in 30, 40, 50% of the workforce that, no matter what mental well-being seminar or emotional coaching you do, that cannot take away the insecurity that kind of action brings in. So if you ask me, the tangible in my view is to go by hard actions that actually, reduce the level of insecurity rather than just go with conversational stuff while taking tough calls, right? So damage control is obviously the next best option. If you can limit the primary damage, and I'm sure there are ways of doing that, because no company really, I mean, that is raising $2-3 billion needs to, kind of chop the last mile 500 people to kind of survive a crisis, right? I mean, I've seen that much business to tell you that's a shortcut that a lot of people choose to take in this, So I'll probably be sounding a little harsh in that side, but I think that has led to a lot of insecurity amongst employees, and that's really creating more of a crisis, especially in the segments that are not expressive, cannot do these work from home calls, cannot have does not have access to colleagues all the time, whether it's on Zoom calls or whatever, right? So relatively less first worldish, I would say, right? That I think is, if you ask me, all of us can reprioritize in some way, that we need to really look at people who cannot talk and communicate as much, or cannot fight back, or cannot even do not even have the option of saying, okay, I can think about my mental well-being, when our actual well-being, emotional well-being is being firstly challenged. So that's one part that I thought I'll put across as my perspective on the issue of media. I think you're absolutely right that I think this whole doom surfing, or what do you call it, has become so endemic to our lives that especially because of WhatsApp and other messenger tools, that everybody is actually forwarding stuff that actually seems like, okay, this is the next worst thing to happen, this is the next worst thing to happen. Even if you look at media coverage today, even in a city like Bombay, where we have 27,000 active cases, it will still be talking about 60,000 as the number, right? I don't understand why we would keep reporting headline numbers if the number of active cases is what really matters, right? So I would clearly take the blame that yes, media has been headline seeking even during the time of crisis. If you ask me, and I'm not saying it's the media's job to reduce people's insecurities, but it cannot be sensationalizing things that are actually out of context. And a lot of data reporting in India, a lot of news reporting in India, even by legitimate sources, are actually bordering on sensational. And I think that adds to the panic, especially for people who actually think about being cocooned in this world, right? So in Bombay, I think it's a very, very interesting example. We've already probably seen the peak of that curve. Yet people keep talking about rising cases. Yet people in the affluent areas don't want to step out, don't want to let their maids and drivers in, despite the fact that the government has said that you cannot do that. So I think while we talk again of issues that affect people who are well off, I think we need to first recalibrate whether we are actually being good human beings and actually trying to take care of people who are not well off, right? I think the segment or the population that gets affected by these kind of things actually need to be taken care of first before we even go into emotional well-being of people who earn like 25 lakhs a year or 40 lakhs a year, right? So that's my limited point there. And I think media, especially news media, I agree with you. I don't have a solution for it, but I think I have actually, personally implemented a simple solution, which is I have actually cut off news television for completely out of my life. The last 2.5 years. I don't know whether that's a good thing to say publicly, but yes, I have done that. And the only thing I've not been able to get, I'm not on any social media, by the way, strangely, despite running a digital media company. And the only thing I've not been able to get off is WhatsApp.
WhatsApp is hard. Yeah, world runs on WhatsApp now. That's the problem.